All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we are completely reframing how we look at emotional pain and physical healing. So often we tend to think of our mental health and our physical health as these two entirely separate systems. But the science, well, it tells a completely different story. We're going to explore the really profound connection between the mind and the body, looking specifically at how things like chronic resentment and trauma get physically trapped inside us, and more importantly, how we can actually use the body to set the mind free.
So let's kick things off with a pretty provocative thought. What if emotional pain isn't just all in your head? What if it's literally physically stored right there in your body? We usually assume that if we just stop thinking about a painful memory, or if we just grit our teeth and push through the stress, it just magically disappears. But the reality is, your nervous system is keeping a very detailed ledger. Every emotional wound, every unresolved injustice, if it isn't processed, your body remembers.
To really understand how this happens, check out this brilliant definition of stress from researcher Susan Folkman. She highlights that stress is a physical, taxing effort that actively drains our internal resources. So when we're lugging around chronic emotional burdens, like a deep resentment, we are constantly expending cognitive and behavioral energy. It's a biological transaction, and trust me, it is expensive.
And because of that heavy biological toll, holding on to chronic resentment manifests as very real, very dangerous physical conditions. Think about it. Resentment is this slow-burning emotion, usually tied to a past betrayal or unmet expectations. And when you just let it fester, it throws your body into a state of heightened, sustained alert. We're talking about elevated blood pressure, a weakened immune system that makes you way more vulnerable to getting sick, and systemic inflammation, which, as we know, is a huge precursor to chronic pain and even autoimmune issues.
I want you to take a breath and really think about this one. When you hold a grudge, you're the only one paying the physical price. It can kind of feel like a form of justice, right? Staying angry at the person who wronged you. But biologically speaking, the person you're furious with isn't experiencing your cortisol spikes. They aren't suffering through your sleep disturbances or taking on your increased risk of heart disease. You are.
Okay, moving to Section 1, how trauma hacks the body and the biology of being stuck. Let's dive right into the actual science of how traumatic energy gets trapped inside us.
If you happen to be experiencing any of these somatic symptoms, it's essentially your body's internal alarm system screaming that it's stuck in survival mode. See, when you experience a trauma, your body instantly prepares to fight or flee. But if that burst of energy is never discharged, it actually gets locked right into your tissues and organs. That's exactly why trauma survivors so frequently suffer from irritable bowel syndrome, chronic muscle tension, which experts often call armoring, and hypervigilance, where your nervous system is just constantly scanning the room for the next threat.
This brings us to the polyvagal theory, which explains this dynamic perfectly. Think of the vagus nerve as your body's internal information highway, running all the way from your brainstem down to your colon. When you're traumatized, you get stuck on the left side of this equation, either in the sympathetic fight-or-flight state or the dorsal vagal freeze state, which is total shutdown. Real healing is all about shifting over to the right side, the ventral vagal state. That's where your heart rate slows down, your digestion actually works, and you finally feel safe enough to connect with other people.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, Bottom-Up Healing, Rewiring the Nervous System. To fix these trapped responses, we have to completely shift our approach.
When we compare treatments, there is a massive difference between traditional top-down talk therapy and bottom-up somatic therapies. Top-down therapies, like cognitive behavioral therapy, are absolutely fantastic for making sense of your story. But if your brainstem's alarm bells are just constantly ringing, you literally cannot think your way out of it. Bottom-up therapies work entirely differently. They focus on calming the physical body first, using movement, breath work, and eye movements so that your mind gets the signal that it's finally safe enough to process the memory.
A really great example of this is ART, or Accelerated Resolution Therapy. It's a fascinating bottom-up tool that acts kind of like a hard reset button for your nervous system. It uses bilateral eye movements to help your brain adaptively reprocess traumatic memories. And what makes it so incredibly powerful is that you don't have to sit there and endlessly recount the trauma out loud, which, let's be honest, can sometimes be re-traumatizing all over again. Instead, you're letting the body do the processing.
All right, Section 3, try it now, the vagus nerve reset. We've talked about the theory, so let's actually break the fourth wall here and do a quick, real-time exercise to hack your nervous system together.
Okay, by following these super simple steps, you're going to physically stimulate those cranial nerves to tell your brainstem that you are safe.
So right now, keep your head completely straight facing forward. Now move only your eyes as far to the right as you comfortably can. Just hold them there. What you're waiting for here is an autonomic release, something like a deep sigh, a swallow, or maybe a yawn. That right there, that is your nervous system literally shifting gears out of fight or flight. Once you feel that, bring your eyes back to center and you can repeat it on the left side.
Just notice how your body feels after trying that. True deep regulation requires a bit of physical patience. You can't force your nervous system to calm down by yelling at it to relax. You have to gently guide it using these exact physiological pathways. Because when the body physically realizes that the lion isn't chasing it anymore, those racing, anxious thoughts naturally begin to quiet down.
That brings us to Section 4, the power of implicit mindfulness and healing below the surface. So we know somatic work takes intentional action, but there's a fascinating side to this too.
A study from the journal Frontiers in Psychology shows we don't always have to consciously try to heal. Researchers wanted to know, can our innate capacity for mindfulness be triggered automatically without any formal meditation? They took 91 people and put them through a highly stressful mock job interview. Then, half the group was unknowingly primed with mindfulness concepts, words like acceptance and letting go, hidden inside a word puzzle. The other half just got neutral words.
The results here are just mind-blowing. Participants who were implicitly primed with mindfulness experienced a significantly faster drop in their cortisol levels. Without even realizing they were being mindful, their bodies actively downregulated their stress hormones. Their internal alarm systems shut off so much faster just by being non-consciously exposed to the concept of letting go. But here is the really wild part. Who actually benefited the most? Turns out, those with naturally low mindfulness, the people who usually struggle the hardest to let things go, saw the biggest psychological benefits. For these folks, this implicit priming basically acted like a shield, protecting their self-esteem and drastically reducing their negative emotions right after the stressful event. So, what does this all mean? It proves that sometimes healing isn't about exhausting mental effort. It's about tapping into the psychological flexibility that is already built into you. Your brain and your body want to return to baseline. They want to process stress. Sometimes just creating the right environment, whether that's through a somatic practice or subtly shifting the concepts you surround yourself with, is enough to let your innate resilience take the wheel. All right, Section 5, reclaiming your emotional freedom and the act of self-respect. Let's tie all of this physical and implicit healing back to our everyday emotional burdens.
Especially that heavy weight of resentment we talked about earlier. To achieve real freedom, we have to completely dismantle the myth that letting go is a gift for the offender. It's not. It's about setting your own nervous system free. A massive barrier is this belief that if we forgive, we're saying the betrayal was okay. But the reality? True forgiveness is a profound act of self-advocacy. It's you deciding once and for all that you are no longer willing to let your body be a storage facility for someone else's bad behavior.
And when you finally use these somatic and mindful tools to release that grip, these are the psychological benefits your system actually has room to experience. When you aren't spending all your subconscious energy armoring your muscles against a ghost from the past, your anxiety plummets. Your cognitive flexibility increases so you can see new solutions to problems. You can finally drop those exhausting emotional defenses and redirect all that trapped energy toward the life you actually want to build.
I really want you to sit with this thought for a second. Healing isn't about forgetting. It is about neutralizing the body's alarm system. You don't have to erase your history. You just want to reach a point where recalling that history doesn't spike your blood pressure or completely ruin your sleep. It's about making peace with your nervous system.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final big question to ask yourself today. Are you ready to let your body release what your mind has been carrying? The science is absolutely clear. Your body has kept the score, but it also has a profound innate ability to clear the debt if you give it the right tools. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and hey, I highly encourage you to try that vagus nerve reset the next time you're feeling overwhelmed. Let your body lead the way.